I'm here with Mr. P. Sainath. Sir, your decision to leave the Hindu, where you were rural affairs editor for a while, and begin this organization, Pari, seems to point to a dissatisfaction with rural reporting in the Indian mainstream media. Is that the case? What are your thoughts on
No, I don't think so. I was extremely satisfied with the work I was doing as rural affairs editor of the Hindu. What I'm doing here, though, in Pari, is what I've done for 22 years full-time and another 12 years part-time. That kind of rural reporting, what do you do in a daily newspaper? You write an article, you have 600, 700 words, you can get in one photograph. I think the digital platform opens up entirely new dimensions, as you know, because you also work on such a platform. So it's like, what I always took my own photographs. I always did my photographs for my stories. Now what I'm able to do is to do stories, photographs, videos, plus collaborate with 200, 300 other journalists.
Okay.
So it's exponentially larger. But I was very happy to be a rural reporter, and I've never described myself as anything but that.
But in terms of the Indian mainstream media's focus on
the Indian media, there is no focus on rural affairs in the mainstream media. I was the only rural affairs editor in existence. Okay, and now there isn't one. You can look at it very simply in terms of how the Indian mainstream media organizes its beats. You have, when I joined UNI in 1980, every newspaper had a labor reporter, a guy who looked at labor and employment. Today, the labor reporter is extinct. Show me one. Today, in the major newspapers, the guy who's doing the labor reporter's work that portfolio is called industrial relations, which means a business correspondent is speaking to the company's PRO, who will tell them what the workers are thinking. Okay, it's a fraud. Second, you do not have a single agriculture correspondent. What you call agriculture correspondents in Delhi are guys who cover the agriculture ministry, and more particularly the agriculture minister. An agriculture correspondent, a farming reporter, is someone who covers the farming season, from the pre-sowing credit season to the mandi. That's an agriculture reporter. You do not have a single one at the national level. Local newspapers may have, but you do not have anyone doing this. So when you do not have an agriculture correspondent, and when you do not have a labor correspondent, you are actually saying that I'm not interested in 75% of the population. They don't make news. That's what you're saying.
Rather, they don't consume your news.
That's the second part of it. If they made news, okay, then you would have a beat, right? So the fact that you don't have that beat says you're not really interested in what they have to say. Nor do you have a single correspondent on the beat of poverty, rural or urban, full-time. Nor do you have a single correspondent on the beat of housing and homelessness full-time, which is a large issue in this country. You do not have anyone who's following and tracking rural migrants. And you've seen the biggest migrations in your history between 2001 and 2011. The first ever census to record in independent India that urban India added more human beings than rural India. Last time that happened was 1921. So you do not have any. So the point I'm trying to say, it's not neglect, it's a structural shutout of the poor. It's a structural shutout of farmers, workers, generally the more vulnerable, and which comes to your point, which is as corporate media, they don't generate revenue for me. If they did, suppose in a region suddenly an auto company was being able to sell more cars, you see a story there. But if they don't, that doesn't interest you. You had Mr. Vineet Jain tell the New Yorker in October 2008, we are not in the newspaper business. We are in the advertising business. You had one of his fellow colleagues or officers tell the New Yorker, you can describe us as a large equity firm with significant media holdings. Okay, so I salute Mr. Vineet Jain for being honest. He's not bullshitting. He's saying it up front. You know, don't expect us to be bothered about this stuff. That's not what we are here for. So yeah, so when you don't have any of these beats, there's a clear structural shutout of ordinary people. Pari is about ordinary people, and it's about the everyday life of everyday people.
So is that what you're hoping with Pari, is to show mainstream media that there is a wealth of stories, the wealth of situations and issues that need to be highlighted, and with an archive as large as this,
so we're not running
ambitious.
We hope that we will influence the mainstream media, but we are not running Pari for them. Okay, we're not trying to teach them or train them. We are running Pari for the subject, for rural India. We are running it for that. You're talking about the most complex part of the planet, 833 million human beings, 780 languages. Yeah, that's news. I mean, that's an astonishing subject. It's a journalist Shangri-La. You can go on forever, and every day you've got 10 stories you can't cope with.
Another question is, you spoke about languages going extinct. You spoke about
225 in the last 50 years, according to the People's Linguistic Survey of India.
And even you said they were slightly off.
They said so. No, that was about the total number of languages. You see, this languages issue is very tricky. The census gives you 1,639, but the census does not use the word languages. It says mother tongues. Now the same mother tongue can be called different things. So there's a lot of overlap within that 1,639. The People's Linguistic Survey, headed by Professor Ganesh Devi, I think they did a spectacular service to this country. They sorted it out. They did a study. They did 3,000 researchers fanned out to do this work. They're able to list endangered languages, everything. There are very few departments of endangered languages in Indian universities. So when in the 780 figure that they came, when I was checking it with him, he said it may be 880 or more. That's what.
No, so what I was thinking is, you were talking about these languages going extinct and the need to archive their existence. You talked about the craft, the artisans who made the Nadaswarams, and how, you know, there are just 4 families left who
in that region
who make them. It seems a bit fatalistic, you know, archiving things that are going extinct, rather than do you envision Pari to be a vehicle for social or cultural reform as well?
I don't for a moment think it's fatalistic, because if it's fatalistic, we won't be doing it. Kuch sudrega nahi to, you know, why should I do anything? You see, you have to get the truth of what's happening. One is, you see, there are two equally ridiculous positions. One is fake optimism. Everything is wonderful. 10% growth will abolish poverty. You had 9% growth for 10 years, with 8 to 9%, without adding one job where it mattered. In fact, you lost many jobs. The other is this cynical pessimism that nothing changes, nothing will change. Both this fake optimism and cynical pessimism have one beautiful common meeting ground. It absolves you of the need to do anything. You know, if things are going so well, why should I do anything? Things are changing. If things are so bad, why should I do anything? It won't make a difference. But between fake optimism and cynical pessimism is a territory called hope. I live there.
So do you see Pari as a vehicle for, say, cultural revival?
I see Pari as a vehicle for good journalism to begin with, to try and recapture the art of storytelling, which seems to be it is lost. You're trying to now re-find it and revive it. It exists in small pockets through individual journalists, some journals, small journals maybe, that sort of a thing. You know, I also feel that when you create such a large thing, lots of different sections of society will make different things out of it. There are those who will use it to link artisans to to markets more directly. There are those who will use it to intervene in education, right? So that's great. But we are basically, there's a reason why we use the word archive. In fact, I forgot to explain that today. We are both a living journal and an archive. Historically, archives have always been burnt, suppressed, censored by states and regimes, from our libraries also, from the time of Alexandria and Nalanda. Hence the idea of a people's archive, something that's out there that states and governments and regimes cannot do away with or control, right? So that was one. But the second thing is that it's a living, breathing journal. Every one of those people you saw is alive and kicking, and they're not in any hurry to go extinct. They're fighting.
Yeah.
They're running their lives as best as they can. The idea of good journalism, or the idea is also, if you want to take 3-4 ideas on that, one is a society in conversation, in debate with itself. That's what good journalism is. That's what a good newspaper is. A society talking to itself, in conversing with itself. Okay, that's one. Second is something that's connecting people. Pari tries to connect 1/3 of Indians who are fast losing their roots, which exist in the other 2/3.
Yeah.
Third, so I mean, these are some of the aspects of good journalism. Is also about storytelling. And historically, everyone, because those who have lived through the last 20 years think that this is journalism. It isn't. Historically, journalism was about storytelling, and it revolved around the lives of ordinary people, from Raja Ram Mohan Roy to Ambedkar and Gandhi, who were your most prolific journalists, by the way. Now, corporatization of the media has created a fake definition of professional. And I speak as a professional who's now in his 35th year in this profession. In corporatization, in the corporate media, if you write about displacement, you write about POSCO, you're an activist. You're not a professional. If you sit on your ass in an office and turn out reams of news stories from corporate press releases, you're a professional, right? So that's it. I'm saying corporatization of the media has really, really corrupted the term professional.
In the mandate that you set for Pari, you talk about involving the rural folk in the way their stories are being told and in the development of the website. Like, that's a pretty tall order. It's very ambitious. How do you intend to go about that?
I don't know that it's it's very ambitious, but I don't think it's a tall order. I would say, first of all, the first film out of Pari, that the boy, the Dalit dancer, he's in complete control of the film. We only carried what he thought was important, what he said. You do not hear the filmmaker or Pari expressing an opinion. You do not hear us editorializing. You do not find us putting in we give something a context. We shoot it in his house to show you what his background is. We shoot it in his home because we want you to know that this boy's mother is an unlettered construction laborer who has a dream for her son and backs him even when he wants to drop out. He's intimidated by the institution called Kalakshetra. His mother tells him, okay, then come back and tend buffaloes. She makes sure that the boy doesn't drop out. In fact, for me, the strongest character of that film is the mother. Okay, she's a Dalit, a construction laborer. They live in a place where they face discrimination, and it's massive achievement. How is that fatalistic? Likewise, so now Kali is making his own film on his folk dance teacher, who is the last full-time folk dance teacher that I know of in Tamil Nadu. So he's already doing it. We have distributed video cams to people from these primary social groups. They're making their own films.
Is that in collaboration with video volunteers? You said that you were
No, video volunteers, I'm on their advisory board.
Okay.
I'm asking them for specific films relating to, say, caste and things like that. Yeah, and yeah, they also come out of, their volunteers also come out of those primary social groups. But that you extend the reach by getting into more languages, by getting into more, that's what the subtitling and the volunteer subtitling, all of that is there. See, it's simply a gigantic difference is made by the kind of journalism you do. It's like, and this irritates me, it infuriates me, when journalists go to say POSCO or to this thing and write about their emotions. You know?
Yeah, I get that completely.
What I mean is, it's a kick him in the ass story. Okay? You've gone there all the way, spent so much time and spent so much of other people's time to talk about your emotions. It's like a bunch of anchors who just emote. They don't anchor and they don't moderate. So if you just shift, instead of your editorializing and imposing a story, that you let the voices of ordinary people come out in the stories, which is something I've tried to do for 34 years in journalism, and you will find a singular absence of the first person singular in the stories I do. You've got only 800 words, don't fucking waste it. Right? You've got only so many words, use it to tell their story, let them tell their story. I made my first attempt. It was a disaster. In 83, 84, I was a very conventionally trained journalist at United News of India. Conventionally trained in that in every story, you give the last word to authority. The Prime Minister said here today, or whoever the clown is, accordingly. So then in 83, 84, I went out to cover a very large water crisis and drought in different states. And I learned the limitations of the kind of journalism we practice. I did these stories, and they won a couple of prizes, which I never picked up because I was so ashamed.
I read that.
And it was that I had experienced such a powerful world, it did not reflect in my stories because we are structured, conventional journalism is about the service of power. Okay? So, you know, you go to a district and you get the collector's word as the last thing on the subject. The collector may be someone who's been 6 weeks in that district. I do not think, as a journalist making a judgment, that his opinion outweighs that of someone who has tilled the soil of that district for 45 years. I would give far greater weightage to that voice about the agricultural crisis than to the collector. I would cover the collector, I'd take his word, but I would not give him primacy over other voices.
Yeah. All right, sir. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that, click up here to support us and down here to subscribe. Be sure to check out our older episodes and the other stuff we do, like Can You Take It, I Agree, panel discussions, comics and animations, and much, much more.